Public money is literally helping make inequality worse. I'm back. The truth is simple. Alberta kids deserve better. Alberta kids deserve better than ideological stunts. Alberta students deserve fully funded, inclusive, and thriving public education. And until they receive what is rightfully theirs, it is our job to call out deception. Our province is being destroyed, and I don't mean that in some vague way. I mean Alberta's public education system. The foundation of our future is being actively dismantled by Danielle Smith and the United Conservative Party. They are starving public schools, attacking trans kids, shoveling money into private education and healthcare, and then congratulating themselves for it. In this video, we are going to look at the numbers, but more importantly, the experiences behind those numbers, because they tell a story of deception. It's a slow dismantling of public infrastructure, of minority rights, and what it means for a province to support all of its citizens equally. I'm davidthey, and Dismantling Hate starts now. Who is Danielle Smith, really? Before we jump into the mess, let's take stock of the person at hand. Danielle Smith presents herself as the consummate political outsider, the maverick premier, if you will. But scratch that surface and you'll find someone who's flirted with populist conservatism, contorted facts to suit ideological goals, and make a career out of rallying grievance politics. Her educational pedigree, not exactly sterling. And I know that sounds rude, but somebody please tell me why I have more education than the premier of the province I live in. Welcome to 2025. Let's talk numbers. Danielle Smith loves to stand at a podium and say that her government is investing record amounts into education. And sure, the dollar figure is higher than last year, but that's only because there are more students, more inflation, and more need. When you compare Alberta to the rest of Canada, we're actually falling behind quite a bit. You see, in the 22-23 school year, Alberta spent about $11,500 per student in public schools, and the Canadian average is $13,000, almost $700. That means Alberta invests 16 to 17% less per child than the rest of the country. That's not leadership. That is neglect dressed up as progress. The Alberta Teachers Association has done these numbers. To properly fund our public education system, Alberta needs $11.35 billion in operational funding. But instead, the UCP budget falls short of about $1.5 billion. That's the equivalent of $9.60 per student per school day that we are not spending. Every single student in Alberta is literally being shortchanged every single day. It's like boasting about topping up your kid's allowance while quietly canceling their dental coverage and stealing their lunch money. So when politicians talk in billions, we have to remember this is not just abstract money. It's textbooks, it's teachers, it's educational assistants, it's the basics that Albertan students go without on a regular basis. Teachers on the brink, that's the title of this chapter here. I do have a script. You've probably noticed me looking down at this point. Hi. My name's David, and being a teacher burnt me out in 4 years. I was pretty close to concluding that I was not meant to be a teacher simply because I wasn't able to deliver the best educational experience within my power in every classroom I was in. But the fundamental error is that I believed that a lot of things that weren't in my power were within my power. I thought if I could improve my skills, I could reach every student better. I thought if I could spend more time doing X, I would be able to deliver Y to this student who needs this accommodation in some way. When it became physically impossible for me to meet the needs of every student in a classroom, I took that on as a moral judgment for myself, and I thought, I'm not able to do this, and I don't want to do this if I'm not able to deliver a good educational experience, which I knew I was. I also knew that it could be better, depending on the student. Some students really get left behind. Anyway, so I left my job as a full-time teacher a handful of years ago, and now that I'm slowly getting back into the classroom, I'm finishing up my master's in education, and I've realized that it wasn't about me. It's an underfunded system that is dropping the ball on thousands of kids every day. But if low funding was not enough, we need to be blunt. The UCP is using trans youth as political pawns. Under the guise of protecting parental authority or gender ideology, they're pushing policy that endangers queer students. Schools become battlegrounds. Teachers and administrators get caught between respecting a student's identity and obeying laws or policies that criminalize or penalize that respect. This is not a glitch. It's intentional. Conservative parental rights movements see children not as citizens or humans with rights, but as wards of the parent or up to and including property. The child's identity becomes something to be controlled and not protected. In July of this year, the provincial government issued a directive mandating the removal of books deemed to contain explicit sexual material, a move that critics argue disproportionately targets queer-affirming literature. The Edmonton Public School Board's internal list included over 200 titles, including literary classics like The Handmaid's Tale. The banning of these books led to outcry and accusations of overreach, and in response to the backlash, Premier Danielle Smith announced a temporary pause on the implementation of the ban to allow for further review and clarification of the policy's scope. This development underscores the ongoing debate over the balance between protecting children from explicit material, which is important, and preserving access to diverse perspectives in literary works and educational settings. It's very basic. But we are fighting for the basics, aren't we? Add in overcrowded classrooms, vanishing support for students with complex needs, and the expectation to implement discriminatory policies around trans students, book bans, and you get a workforce pushed to the breaking point. When teachers leave, they are not just walking away from jobs, they are walking away from the future of our students. Teachers are not preparing to strike because they're greedy. They're striking because of all of the issues we've talked about so far, and at the bottom of that list is wages. They have been eroded over a decade. Inflation has gone up more than 30% in Alberta, but many teachers' raises were 0 and up to 3%. The most recent contract that the government submitted showed a 12 to 18% raise over 4 years, and that sounds decent until you realize it doesn't cover what's already been lost, and not even close. Teachers are still 20 to 25% where they should be in regards to inflation. And while I understand that most working people don't have salaries that rise with inflation, that doesn't mean that teachers shouldn't have it. Teachers should have wages that rise with inflation, and so should everybody else. This isn't just that teachers are outliers and they want more because they're greedy. If that deems teachers as greedy, everybody should be greedy. We should all be able to afford to live. Oh my God. Oh! Okay. Teachers are not asking for luxury. They are asking for survival, for fairness, and for a system that can actually teach students instead of just rather exist on paper. The next thing we need to talk about is the private school jackpot. Now let's follow the money. Alberta already funds private schools at 70% of the per student rate that public schools get, and that is the highest subsidy in Canada, and that's even before you factor in the tuition fees that parents are paying for their students to go to these private schools, which range from $12,000 to $35,000 a year. Some of the wealthiest private schools in Alberta collectively received over $43 million in public funding in a single year. Meanwhile, public schools are struggling to afford the basics like educational assistance and literal classrooms. So when Smith talks about choice, what she really means is that wealthy families get more choices, subsidized by Albertan tax dollars. To put it another way, Alberta's public schools spend about $11,500 per student, and some private schools spend up to $39,500 per student when you combine public subsidies with that same tuition. Public money is literally helping make inequality worse. The UCP playbook it's a classic. We'll hand that to them. Undermine the public option until people think that there's no other choice but the alternatives. This is how privatization of the education industry looks, and we're staring down the barrel of it right now. Charter schools and private schools are being bolstered. The narrative being pushed is that public schools are failing, ideological, unsafe, stifling parents. Then the alternative. La, homeschooling, religious schools, private schools, which the UCP wants to empower with subsidies, tax breaks, and even direct funding. But remember, this is a shell game. The playing field is far from level. Private schools can pick and choose. They can decide who they accept. They can ignore inclusivity mandates and push agendas, and they're not held to the same standard of transparency or accountability as public schools. Meanwhile, the public schools, who serve 80 to 90% of Albertan students, are left with dwindling resources and overworked staff. Now we need to talk about the bribery of it all. I saw this video from the Your Alberta YouTube channel, and then it was privated, so I don't know if an intern is going to be fired because they left that out early. The $30 a day bribe. Let's watch the video now.
We understand that a teacher's strike could bring extra challenges for families. That's why Alberta's government is preparing a parent support payment program to help offset added costs if children are home from school. If a strike happens, eligible parents and guardians of children 12 and under may receive $30 per child per day. To receive payments, you'll need a verified alberta.ca account. Create and verify your account at account.alberta.ca. It only takes a few minutes, and your information is always secure. Payments will occur monthly via Interac e-transfer, starting October 31st, but retroactive to October 6th. Get ready now by creating and verifying your alberta.ca account. Details on how to apply for the Parent Support Payment Program will be available soon.
Let's do the math. If that money went into the public system, it could close the funding gap quite literally overnight. But instead, the plan is to hand parents cash so they can abandon public schools for private and homeschooling options. This is not about helping families. It is about weakening public schools until they collapse, then pointing at the rubble and saying, "See? We told you public school doesn't work." And if that sounds too conspiratorial, ask, do they do this in other places in the world? And the answer is yes. In many other parts in the world, specifically in the United States, this voucher scheme and per student funding that follows the student have decimated public systems. That model is being pushed here. This idea isn't to fix public schools, it's to hollow them out from the inside. And what happens when people speak up against this? On September 29th, 2025, at one of the Alberta Next Town Hall panel events, a high school student attempted to ask a question about why taxpayer dollars were being shifted to private schools, but their microphone was cut. The moderator, Bruce McAllister, then publicly chastised that student, saying, "Your parents should turn you over their knee." That actually happened. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Evan Lee. I'm a Calgary high school student. Like many high school students, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen to the upcoming Alberta teachers strike, which just an hour ago, they voted 89.5 in favor of striking.
Evan?
And my question is, why is the government handing out four...
Here's the thing, Evan. Evan, I applaud you coming here to speak. I don't applaud how you're trying to speak. It's not making any sense. So we're going to move along, okay? Let's go over to this microphone, okay? I know you'd love some chaos, but your parents should turn you over your knee. Let's go over here.
Oh, that's rude. That's rude. No. Rude.
Go ahead.
That is disgraceful. So, disgraceful comments aside, my name is Jennifer from Calgary.
Well, let's actually think about what just happened here. A teen asks a policy question and gets silenced, then gets told they deserve a spanking. And this is happening in front of a political crowd. That's the level of respect that this government has for the people who will inherit the mess that we are currently creating. This moment typifies this regime's approach. Reinforce power, shame, challenge, and push the narrative that only respectable questions are allowed, and the rest will be suppressed. If your leaders are responding to very serious and pertinent questions from students with threats of spanking, you're not governing a democratic society. You're staging a show predicated on obedience. We're going to take a quick look at a Reddit comment that presumably is by this person who was silenced in the video. Hello everyone, I am the high school student in this video. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your support. From fellow citizens who personally came up to me after the panel today, to online comments, I am extremely grateful that there are still those in our province willing to stand up to unfair treatment and defend open dialogue, which was apparently the mandate, air quotes, of Alberta Next. It's honestly hilarious how far Danielle Smith and those around her will go, and I think Bruce, the moderator, needed to get spanked more in childhood, because how did he even come up with that? For anyone interested in what I said after the mic was cut, I essentially asked why the UCP hands out $461 million to private schools, funding their tuitions, which serve about 5% of Albertans by the way, with 70% of what taxpayers provide the public system with. In fact, this figure is expected to increase to $544 million in the 27-28 fiscal year. That's a 30% rise compared to the 6% that ATA teachers would get if they had somehow accepted the recent diabolical offer. I simply cannot comprehend any logical reason for the government to be giving tax dollars to private institutions, and I am gravely concerned that this is the path that healthcare will also go on. Moreover, Alberta recently posted a forecasted deficit of $6.5 billion, down from an $8.3 billion surplus last year. While I understand the volatility of our oil and gas commodities, this is not responsible governance whatsoever. Alberta education is in triage. Since 2019, I have never been in a class with less than 35 students, save for one specialized French higher level IB course. I have experienced firsthand the struggles that special needs students go through and the lengths that my teachers go to in order to provide help to them. Yet, their efforts are in vain. All this while teachers have had a 6% salary boost since 2013 versus an inflation rate of 30%. One does not need to be an adult to understand the severity of the situation. However, our province's learning used to have a reputation. When I applied to universities this fall, many of them still view our curriculum as among the most rigorous in the country, as such as BC and Ontario schools still give me a 4% grade average boost. I believe I am speaking for all Albertans when I say we want to be regarded highly in the future. We rank dead last in Canada for education spending, but the ATA has given us an opportunity to fight back, and now is the time to act. I urge each and every one of my peers in Alberta schools to stand up and support their teachers during this strike. Students stand in solidarity with our mentors and role models. Personally, I am in the midst of organizing a walkout in Calgary and will post more details soon. Thank you. To have such clear communication as a high school student is out of this world impressive. I don't know this person, but I'm very proud of this person because that was hard to do. Let's take a look at the big picture here. Education is not just another budget line, it's the foundation of our democracy, equality, and opportunity. And every dollar we take away from public schools is a dollar taken away from smaller class sizes, better support for students, mental health resources, fair teacher pay, and inclusive policies that keep trans and queer kids safe. Danielle Smith can try and spin this as parental rights and choice, but what it really is privatization. It's a strategy to dismantle the public system, funnel taxpayer money into private hands, and silence anyone who dares to question it. Literally silence people. Literally. We just watched it. So what do we do with this mess? Well, we have to name it. Call these actions what they are. Ideological assaults on public goods, culture war distractions, and censorship of youth voices. We can support teachers through their strike actions, solidarity campaigns, go to the rallies. We can support students especially queer ones, and more specifically trans ones, with safe spaces, legal challenge. Skipping Stone, I believe, is currently involved in a class action lawsuit against the Alberta government, or has been recently in the past. We need to engage in the school board elections. That's something interesting because those candidates do really matter. And while school boards might seem like a dusty place that you might not want to spend your time, a lot of the influence for decisions about education are filtered through those school boards in some way. And because the UCP has an influence over these boards, it's a big control lever for them. We can demand transparency and accountability as much as we can. Like, where is the money going? Who is benefiting from this money? We deserve to see it. We pay so much taxes. And then the last one is to amplify these youth's voices. The kid who got muted and theoretically spanked deserves a megaphone, not silence. In conclusion, our province is being destroyed, and the front line of that destruction right now is public education. Alberta already spends less per child than the national average and underfunds classrooms by billions, and then turns and props up private elite schools with public subsidies. Teachers are burning out and students are being silenced. If we don't fight for public education, we lose the very idea of equality of opportunity. Our province is being destroyed not by fate, but by design, and not by a lack of caring people, but by a government that sees public systems as obstacles and not assets. Danielle Smith may pretend that she's the anti-establishment leader, but look closely. She wants to break down institutions, mute the opposition, and rebuild only the parts that serve her ideological regime. Students, teachers, committees, all of us, we have to fight. Because if we don't, the public services you and I rely on a daily basis will be dismantled one lie at a time. Danielle Smith keeps saying, Alberta is strong and free, but without education, we will just be uninformed and poor. I wonder who has a vested interest in an uninformed and poor population. Our province is being destroyed. Public money belongs in public schools. Anything less is theft from our children's future. If public education fails, it's not just schooling that fails, it's society. Thank you for watching this episode of Dismantling Hate. I'm really thankful that you got to the end. If you're interested in learning more, I have all of my citations from where all of my things came from in the description of this video, so that's a good place to start. You can show your support in a lot of ways that we went over just a few minutes ago, but the most important thing to me, at least, is just talking to people. Like, people who you think know about this situation probably don't. I feel like I'm quite plugged in, but it's because I work in public education, so I know more than the average person. And I think when we know a lot about something, we tend to assume that everybody else knows a lot about that same something. But no, talk to your people. Talk to anyone. Especially the people that are canvassing right now. Somebody's in my apartment building right now knocking on doors, canvassing for city council. This is the time to interact with those people. This is the time to interact with those people who are giving unskippable ad when they knock at your door and you answer accidentally because you don't like talking to strangers. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you liked the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.